Hello, fourth graders. We are going to be adding decimals today. So what I would like to have you do is get a piece of notebook paper, and I'd like you to follow along with me and write down what I'm writing down. And I'm going to do a quick review of a concept we were learning about last week. And so on your paper, what I'd like you to write is 3/10 plus 4/100. And remember, we've talked about when we add fractions, we can't add fractions together when they don't have the same denominator. So in order to solve this problem accurately, we need to change 3/10 or 3/10 into hundredths or pennies. So just as a reminder, 3/10 is the same, 3 dimes is the same as 30 pennies, right? They equal each other. So we can convert 3/10 to 30/100 and then go along our merry way and add up this problem. So let's rewrite that as 30/100, same thing as 3/10, plus 4/100. And when we're done, we should have 34/100, right? Now, if I asked you to write 34/100 in a decimal, what would that look like? Just as a review. Go ahead and write your answer. It should look like this, right? 34/100. And these two representations of 34/100 are the same. They're equivalent and equal to each other. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be doing some word problems with money to practice adding and subtracting fractions. So I'm going to give you a problem to take a look at, and I'd like you to solve it with me, and then we'll talk about how we go about adding decimals. There's a couple of rules you need to follow when you add decimals, and we'll get into that in a minute. So this one says Sulin needs $7.13 to buy a book. In her wallet, she finds $3 bills, 4 dimes, and 14 pennies. How much more money does Sulin need to buy the book? Okay, so when I do a word problem, I like to read it a few times to kind of get my understanding really clear. So let's read it again. Sulin needs $7.13 to buy a book. In her wallet, she finds $3 bills, 4 dimes, and 14 pennies. How much more money does Sulin need to buy the book? So let's figure out first, what should we figure out first? Maybe how much money she has altogether? So let's do this. We will write down $3 because that's what she has. She also has 4 dimes. And have you noticed that I'm using placeholder zeros here for my $3? I'm just not writing the number 3. I'm showing the decimal places so that they have show that there's no dimes and no pennies in the $3. She has 4 dimes, which is equivalent to 40 cents. And she has 14 pennies, right? So 14 pennies would be the same as a dime and 4 pennies. We can't put 14 pennies all into the hundredths column. We have to represent that we've gone up to a dime plus 4 pennies. Okay, so let's go ahead and add this up. We have 0 plus 0 plus 4. We have 4 plus 1 plus 0, which is 5. And one of the rules that we need to remember is when we add decimals, our decimals must be lined up. And what I mean by that is I think of it as a dot to dot. So if I were to connect my dots when I'm adding decimals, I should be able to draw a straight line from here all the way to here, depending on how many numbers I'm adding up. They should be in a straight vertical line, okay? And if they are, what that means is your place values lined up. You're adding pennies in this column, you're adding dimes or tenths in this column, and here you're adding ones. So your decimal point must always be lined up vertically. The other thing you need to know is when you get your answer, this decimal point also comes down here to show that you have 54 cents. And remember, anything to the right of the decimal is less than a whole, or less than $1. So this decimal point is saying we have 54 cents. Now we bring down the 3, and our answer, the first part of our answer is that she needs, or she has $3.54, right? But she needs $7.13 to buy the book, and So what do we need to do next? Well, we need to do what? We need to subtract, right? So we're going to write down $7.13, and we're going to write down $3.54 because that's what she has already. Okay. Now to figure out how much more she needs, we're going to subtract, and that will give us the difference. And difference always means subtract. How much more does she need? So have you noticed that I've lined up my decimal points? So I know that my place value is aligned. It's really important when you're doing decimals, adding and subtracting decimals, that you write really as neatly as you can. So sometimes in class, what I'll see kids, they'll write 7 13/100ths, and they'll write 3 54/100ths, and then they'll subtract. And do you see how this looks a little confusing? Like, it almost looks like my 5 is under my 3 here. And if my 5 is under my 3, then I'm trying to calculate dimes and pennies outside of their place value, which is not going to work, right? So it's really important that you write neatly and that you give your numbers a little bit of space so that you can really see that they're lined up. So if you've written this problem already and it's a little bit messy, what I'd like you to do is rewrite it and just make sure that you have your place values lined up really nicely. Okay, so that's a habit that you want to get into really quickly so that you can move quickly through math. Okay, so here we go. $7.13 minus $3.54. So I'm going to start with my pennies, and I'm going to say 3 take away 4. I can't do that, of course, so I need to borrow. And what I'm doing is I'm going to borrow 1 dime, which will leave me 0 dimes, right? And that dime is going to hop over here to help the pennies. So now I have a dime plus 3 pennies, so I have 13 cents. And now I can go ahead and subtract 13 take away 4. And what is it? It is 9. You are correct. Okay, here we go again. 0 take away 5. I can't do that, so I'm going to borrow $1 from the $7, and I'm going to take it to the bank and get 10 dimes, right? So 10 dimes equals $1. So now I can say, what is 10 take away 5? And it's 5. And did you notice I put my decimal point right there? So 59 cents. And then 6 take away 3 is 3. And so the answer to the question, how much more money does Sue Lynn need to buy the book? She needs $3.59 to buy the book. And we put a $sign there. And then the last thing I want you to do is I want you to just test yourself, and I want you to see if you can line up your decimal points in a straight line by connecting the dots. See if you can do that. And we're not going to do that every time, but it's really important that we have a straight line. I will show you an example of what happens when we don't have a straight line. So let's say we have 3/10 plus 4/100, something like that again. Okay, if I do 3/10 plus 4/100 and I put my decimal point way over here, you'll notice that this is representing dimes, right? So this is 3 dimes. Take away 4 pennies. And I can't do that subtraction problem now because they're not in the same place value. And also, my decimal points are going diagonally, so that's also a big clue that I am off, right? So I'm not going to get a coherent answer by not lining up my decimal points. And in math class, the goal is to be accurate, right? So we want to be accurate. Make sure you line up your decimal points. Okay, the next one we're going to do is, let's do this one. Miguel has $1 bill, 2 dimes, and 7 pennies. John has $2 bills, 3 quarters, and 9 pennies. How much do they have in all? Okay, so I'm going to read that again. Miguel has $1 bill, 2 dimes, and 7 pennies. John has $2 bills, 3 quarters, and 9 pennies. How much do they have altogether? So what I'd like you to do is begin writing down this problem, and I will do the same. If you want to do this one independently, feel free to pause the video and then turn it back on, and I will also be doing the work. But I want you to give it some thinking time before you watch me do the work. Okay, so go ahead and set that up. Remember to keep your decimals lined up. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. Miguel has $1, 2 dimes, and 7 pennies. John has $2, decimal point, 3 quarters, which is 75 cents, right? And he has 9 pennies. So how am I going to get those 9 pennies in? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put them down here. I'm going to add the 9 pennies. And you might have combined 75 and 9 and just put the answer for what 75 plus 9 is. Like in my mind, I'm calculating it's 84 cents. So you could do it that way as well. I'm going to just line it up this way, and then we're going to go ahead and add. And what we're figuring out is how much money they have all together. So 7 plus 5 is 12. 12 plus 9 is, 12 plus 8 is 20. So 12 plus 9 is going to be 21. So I'm going to write 21. And then 2 plus 2 plus 7 is what? It's 11. You are correct. I'm going to bring my decimal point down because now I'm adding dollars, right? And I want to make sure that I'm showing anything to the left are whole numbers, anything to the right are parts of numbers. So 2 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. So the answer to the question is they have $4.11 altogether. Okay, we're going to do another one. This one looks really big, but it's not that big. So let me erase. Go ahead and silent read this one, and then I'll read it out loud. Okay, Vanessa has 6 dimes and 2 pennies. Joaquim has $1, 3 dimes, and 5 pennies. Jimmy has $5 and 7 pennies. They want to put their money together to buy a game that costs $8. Do they have enough money to buy the game? If not, how much money do they need? Okay, so when I do a problem like this, I like to estimate first. So the question is, do they have enough money? So Vanessa has 6 dimes and 2 pennies, so in my head I'm thinking that's 62 cents. Joaquim has $1, 3 dimes, and 5 pennies. Jimmy has $5 and 7 pennies. So what's your estimation? Do you think they have $8 more than $8, or do you think they have less? Keep that in mind as you calculate, and then when you get your answer, you can check that with your estimation and see if you are correct. Okay, so Vanessa has 6 dimes, and I'm going to move this out of the screen for a minute. So she has 6 dimes and 2 pennies. Joaquim has $1, 3 dimes, and 5 pennies. And again, I'm asking you to write really neatly, and I'm asking you to make sure your decimal points are lined up, and then your place value columns are lined up as well. Jimmy has $5 and 7 pennies. Okay, $5 and 7 pennies. What did I just do wrong? I did something terribly wrong. I represented 7 pennies as 7 dimes. That's not going to work, right? That's not the same thing. So that's where our pal, the placeholder 0, comes in very handy, right? We want to make sure we represent our hundreds correctly. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and add. So 2 plus 5 is 7. I have 2 7s. I know that 2 times 7 is 14, so I'm going to write my answer there. And then here I see a fast 10. 1 plus 6 plus 3 is 10, right? I'm going to carry the 1. And now I have 5 plus 1 plus 1. And the answer is $7.04. So the question was, do they have enough money? How does this answer match up with your yes or no? Think about that. Okay, so this is a 2-part story problem. So what you need to do now is, let's read this part again. It says they want to put their money together to buy a game that costs $8. Do they have enough money to buy the game? No. If not, how much more money do they need? So what are we going to do now? What's our next step? Well, we need to see how far away $7.04 is from $8. So we're going to write $8, and I'm going to use my placeholder zeros to show that there's no dimes and no pennies. And then I'm going to write how much money they have, which is $7.04. And then I'm going to subtract. And it's probably been a while since you've subtracted, so let's kind of review that process if you're a little bit rusty. So what we have here is we have 0 take away 4. We can't do that, so we need to borrow, right? So we go over here to try to borrow, and we can't borrow there because there's nothing in the tenths column. So we borrow here. We're going to borrow $1 whole, which reduces the 8 down to 7. And we're going to give that dollar to the tenths column right there. And now we have 10 dimes, which equals $1. So we still have $8, right? Now we need to borrow again to give this column some pennies. So I'm going to borrow 1 dime. And I'm going to get 10 pennies over there. Now I can go ahead and subtract. So 10 take away 4 is 6. 9 take away 0 is 9. And 7 take away 7 is 0. And my answer is 96 cents. Okay, so what you're going to be doing today for your independent work is you're going to be doing a math worksheet that asks you to add up things like 4 tenths and 7 hundredths. And on that math worksheet, it's called a sprint. And a sprint means when you're running really fast. So what I want you to think about today as you do this problem, or these problems, is I want you to think about going fast. If you know that 4 dimes is worth 40 cents, To convert, all you need to do is that, and then you have a really quick, easy math problem. So remember that. We've practiced that a lot, so I just want you to keep that in mind, and I want to see how, I won't be able to see it because you're at home and I'm at home, but I want to know if you are able to do that sprint page pretty quickly, like run through it really quickly. And get into the habit of thinking of equivalent fractions when it comes to tenths and hundredths. Then the other math sheet you're going to do is in your workbook, and it's just going to have you practice adding up decimals and lining up the decimal points and making sure your addition is correct. So that's what you'll be doing next, and I will see you tomorrow.